all right? There's such a thing as a working class culture, and it has its values, it has its things that people feel are right and wrong and all that. It's just that the whole system is set up not to meet the needs of these kids, the curriculum, everything.
Because I'm just going to do bad in school, can't do it.
There aren't a huge amount of prospects within this area, so where are your aspirations coming from?
Your father was a fisherman, your grandfather was a fisherman, you followed on in their footsteps.
The kids need a chance.
Yeah, they do.
Need a chance.
They need a chance.
There's no fishing no more. There's no fishing. It's nice for the memories, but there's no fishing.
Those memories run deep. Grimsby was once the world's biggest fishing port, and there's huge pride in the legacy. But as the industry declined, it's left the people and the place struggling.
This community is one of the most left behind in the UK, bottom 3%. But it's a fantastic community. Just the humour, people are really down to earth, they can spot a phony a mile off.
John Ellis has run the Shalom Youth Centre in East Marsh for 54 years, and he's worried about a growing problem.
The education system is totally failing a whole stream of young people.
This last 12 months is the first time ever we've come across young people who say they don't go anywhere. They're just not engaging with any form of education.
So lads, why aren't you all in school today?
I won't go to school for like 3 months. I went to school, got kicked out. It's boring. I don't like it. We didn't even learn. Everyone was messing about and that. Like, no one learned.
I'd say there's easy 15, 20 of them that come in here that are all in the same situation, a couple of hours school in a day.
I suppose all this academy stuff has improved education for the top kids. For the young people we know, it's just a disaster because it's moved further away from the culture that they live in.
Yeah.
I want to get a good job.
And do you think you need school for that good school marks?
Yeah. Just can I?
You feel like you believe in yourself, like?
No. Not really. Because I'm just going to do bad in school. Can't do it.
Jackson's battle seems to be with the system, though, not the subjects.
Do you struggle with the work, Jax?
No, I'm in top set for maths, but then...
I was like you. I was brought up down Rutland Street, and my dad used to say to me all the time, "You're just stupid." Oh, people used to say that to me, and I believed it for a long, long time. And then when I was 38, I went to uni and got all the things that I wanted to get. But I think round here, the culture around here, you are a bit like that. It takes you a long time to grasp that that's the things you need to do. And you can't do anything. Don't listen to the people that say you can't.
Jackson is being brought up by his grandparents, Harold and Karen.
We want them to have the best. You know, we never had it, so we want it better for them. When I was a young boy, with Grimsby being a fishing town,
Long time ago.
whatever you did, it was like my old man would say to me, "Get your ass out to sea."
Yeah, but that was in them days, and it's different
I'm
now
just
for
saying,
these children.
a job
you
was
know.
a job.
I
you
know,
know.
but these children don't have that anymore. The kids.
Karen,
Wouldn't you
you know.
like your kids to be fishermen? Yes.
Well, it'll never happen because fishing industries.
I know exactly what I'm saying, but wouldn't you have liked that?
I would have done, yeah, but
Yeah, so you pass it
Yeah,
down,
never
don't
happened.
you? The kids need a chance.
yeah, they do.
need a chance.
They need a chance.
There's no
Yeah.
fishing no more. There's no fishing. It's nice for the memories, but there's no fishing.
Hello? There we are.
So school's boring, is it? Wait till you start work. Come on.
Come on, where's
So we're a
that?
builder.
Well, you've got a good brain. Why do you want to be a builder?
It's the easiest job.
You're better than that. You can
Yeah.
do a lot more. And you really
I
can.
think you should be a solicitor or an accountant. That's where the penga is.
At the local food bank, we meet Emily, who's volunteering while she's trying to find work.
I was quite lucky I was in top set and I enjoyed school, so they kind of encouraged us in top set to really try and go to university. They would take us to the local university, show us what it was like, and I think that was really important for people like me whose parents didn't go to uni. But actually I found my experience, it was quite isolating being from my background, because a lot of the people there are quite posh and all their parents have gone to uni and that kind of thing. As I come back home, because of the cost of living and I want to be close to my parents, it's not really a lot here. I was kind of told that if I went to uni I would I'd get a degree and I'd be able to get a job and it would kind of answer all my questions, or it's the natural next step. So I'm now 65k in debt, which I'll probably never be able to pay it off.
On the other side of the counter, the barriers to success at school are more immediate.
I'm at the food bank for a very good reason. I'm skinned.
Yeah.
Not afraid to admit it.
I won't be able to afford uniform.
The second
It's
she
like
breaks
200
the
quid
school
for.
shoes, and she goes in Willie's the next day, I get moaned at heavily. Who wears school shoes? I can't afford any till I get the next month's payment. If they're knackered and it's raining all the time as well, and the clothes are constantly wet, they're going in to wash the same day. I don't have a dryer at home, can't afford it.
They just want the children to sit, conform, and just face the front and be done.
It's an old-fashioned curriculum, what's not been changed over years, and kids are just learning different things now, aren't they? I'm trying to find a job as well with the job centre. I'm doing so many search hours a week. I get the kids to school on time one day, but it's still not the right coat, or it's still not the right pair of trousers, or not, congratulations, you've been on time every day this week. Nothing of that. None of the well done. It's all just negativity, and I can't stand it anymore.
10 minutes up the road in Cleethorpes is St Peter's Primary School.
Did they eat anything today? Miss Abbott has been in this school for over 30 years. We are right at the heart of the community. We know our kids, we know our parents, we know the support that they may need. So we have our own food bank and school uniform clothing bank. When the children come into reception, they don't come in at particularly high baselines. And I think following COVID, I think it has changed the perception of people, their value in education as a way out of poverty or into employment. All right, year 6.
Do you all enjoy school?
Nope. At least you're honest. You enjoy parts of it?
Some parts are dead fun and exciting, but some parts you just sat in a room writing for an hour.
Do you think? Sometimes difficult for everyone.
Well, yeah, but that's part of learning, isn't it? I find things really difficult in my job. We've done a lot of work on behaviour. It's not about allowing behaviours just to slide, but it's about understanding them, respecting that those things have happened. It hasn't ruined their day, it hasn't ruined that relationship.
The primary schools are very much more people-centred, and then they go up to secondary school and the whole thing is crammed into this highly academic procedure, and it just destroys a lot of kids.
Back at the Shalom Centre, they're determined to catch and care for the ones who fall out of the system. But they say that system must now change if every child is to have the same chance of success.
A lot of the young people who come here have absolutely got such a low self-esteem. This is where the love starts.
It's like family, isn't it?
Like some of the kids here, I was the mum and dad's youth worker. They know you, they trust you, and they'll come to you with anything they need help with or anything, but you need to have that relationship first to get to that stage with them. And they deserve so much better, all of them. Right, come on, let's get home.
Right, love.
Well, why are the government focusing on this very specific group, and what should they be doing about it all? Well, earlier I spoke to the academic, Dr. Lisa Mackenzie, whose work focuses on class inequality and social justice, to Katie Carr, Director of Education at Public First, a think tank currently chairing a committee exploring this issue, and from Blackpool, Alan Francis, the Chair of the Social Mobility Commission and Principal of Blackpool and Fylde College. Dr. Lisa Mackenzie, you have just watched our film. I just wondered what you made of it.
first of all, I thought it was a brilliant film, actually. I thought the people in that film were great. You know, they were honest. They were talking about their communities, and not in a negative way either. You know, they were talking about lots of positives about the area.
Very proud of their community.
Yeah, very proud, and I think we should never forget that these communities, although they have been hollowed out, they've had 40 years of deindustrialisation in Grimsby, you know, end of the fishing, but they're still very proud people. So what it reminded me of is where I'm from, in Nottinghamshire, where the coal mines and the factories closed, which is also predominantly white working class area, and watching the people. And I was one of those people, because I left school at 16, went to work in a factory, and then obviously all the factories closed. And the young people where I live now in Nottinghamshire, they're in the same situation as those people in Grimsby.
I mean, the government have decided to focus quite clearly on this group of children.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's important? Because it's a very contested area, isn't it? Who is working class?
Yeah.
What relevance is their whiteness?
Yes, yeah. What's happened over the last, I don't know, perhaps even 20 years, is the inner city schools have upped their game. And the deindustrialised communities and the coastal communities, they have been, I don't call them left behind, because that sort of suggests they've done something. They were purposefully left out. So when there's been plans about upping education and who gets, you know, a better education, these communities have been completely left out on purpose, I think. So with the government now focusing on these communities, it does make me wonder what's now going to happen. Are they going to take resources away from other people? Because if we're talking about class in Britain, we're talking about working class people throughout Britain, not just white working class or black working class. What we don't want to see is other groups of working class people falling.
And Katie Cole, what does your research show about this particular group of children and why succeeding seems to be so difficult?
Yeah, so we've been doing research with pupils, parents, teachers across the country. And I think there's something really interesting in the intersection between class and ethnicity here, where we know that a third of white working class pupils get a grade 4 or above in English and maths, which is kind of the essential qualifications that you need in order to access almost every part of education and employment, compared with 2/3 of other pupils. So lots of the themes that came out in your, I thought, brilliant report chimed very much with the research that we hear. So lots of issues to do with what goes on in schools and in education. So we know that 1 in 5 children are persistently average overall. That's double for white working class children.
Persistently absent?
Yes, so missing more than 1 in 10 days of education. So that's 2 in 5 for white working class group. They're also 3 times more likely to be suspended than other children. They're 4 times more likely to be excluded than other children. And we also see issues to do with the kind of family relationship between schools and white working class communities, and also with the sort of implicit promise that we have that doing well at school leads you to doing well in life, feeling like it's not something that this community buys or believes in anymore.
Or can see.
Yeah.
Lots to talk about there, but Alan Francis, you're both the chair of the Social Mobility Commission and the chief executive of a further education college in Blackpool. The big question is, why? Is it ethnicity? Is it place? Is it deindustrialisation? There's no easy answer, is there?
There's definitely no easy answer. I'm really pleased that you're highlighting the problem, and I echo the views of the other 2 guests that this is a really important issue that needs a lot more attention. In fact, we would say at the Social Mobility Commission that this is probably up there with the most challenging social mobility issues we've currently got. But if I could give a little bit of context and then get into to go into your question of the why, it's important to say that actually, in terms of social mobility, the vast majority of people in this country end up in a different social class or socio-economic group to their parents. It's around about 70%. It's been consistently like that for quite a while. It's been, of those, between 30 to 40% are upwardly mobile and around in the 20%-ish downwardly mobile, and the rest tend to stay in the same place. Because what sits behind that pattern is a really important shift in the nature of occupations and the economy, which I think the guests have alluded to. And that's meant that we've seen over a century a real substantial decline in what we call traditionally working class or manual jobs. So in 1911, around about 80% of jobs were manual occupations, whereas in 2011, it's well under 50%. And in that occupational change, we've seen some massive changes in social mobility. So many people during that period, particularly in the 70s, 80s, 90s, into the early 2000s, have come from working class families where the children then have gone into middle class or white collar jobs and done well in terms of education and moved up. But that's partly because the nature of the economy has changed. But there's the very important part of that is the point that I think Lisa was making about deindustrialisation. That occupational change in this country is a particularly geographically disparate one. So we've seen London and the areas around London grow really spectacularly, and we've seen areas outside of London, with exceptions like Manchester, and we're starting to see some changes in other big cities now, starting to improve, but they've been, we can use the word left behind, we can use other words, but they've not had the same range of opportunities. And what you do see is a very strong focus on post-industrial and coastal towns. So if we took the areas with the lowest educational attainment in the year 2000, you'd say it was London and the post-industrial areas and coastal towns. Now, 20 odd years later, you'd say, no, London actually has done well educationally. Again, I'm reinforcing the point I think the other guests made, but educationally in those other areas, they've stayed pretty much where they were. And there's a cluster of reasons why that's the case. Economic, cultural, social. We can argue over which is the most important. They're all factors that are important. What we need to do is start to unravel how we can solve those problems.
Exactly to the point that they're all important, these things, aren't they?
They are all important. But one of the things that I've got to sort of say about this is this concept of social mobility and what it means. Because I have never liked that concept about social mobility, because it's always meant doing something to the working class. You know, that the working class needs to be socially mobile. If there was true social mobility in this country, you would have as many people just moving around. So you'd have middle class people who would be falling as well, because they'd be socially mobile down. What we never do with social mobility is look at the way that middle class people game the system. We always look at what we can do to working class people. You know, they need better education, they've got to have a better idea about education. You know, there's something wrong with their culture, there's something wrong with them. What we never do is we never look at middle class people and how they game the system.
But the reality for the people in Grimsby and in communities like that across the country is they do have to try. You know, education has to try and work for them, whether it's failing them or they're...
Yeah, but what happens? So you could like raise the standards at a school in Nottinghamshire, where I'm from, in Ashfield or Mansfield or Sunderland or Blackpool. You raise that standard, but then what? Because they're coming out of school at 18 to what? To a post-industrial community that has been hollowed out.
And what does all that do? What does your research show that all of that does to expectations, hope, aspirations among these kids and their families?
Yeah, I think what we heard really clearly was that white working class families tend to have a different version of success than what we would say that the education system has overall, where there's a kind of push towards university and higher education and those sorts of routes. And when we asked white working class parents what they wanted for their children, they all said that they wanted them to be happy, but that happiness came from localness. There was a real joy in the community of white working class, actually, where they you know, spoke really powerfully about wanting to stay in their locations, wanting to build that community, and the kind of joy and success of life comes from that. And so I think the education system needs to kind of think about how we can meet them there more, rather than...
and that is often the narrative, isn't it? That working class people want to get away from their community, or they want to get away from their past.
Yeah, they don't.
But in the film, they don't.
No, what they want to do is they want to stay, and they want the opportunities to be for them as well, as they are throughout the country. That's one of the real issues that we've now got, because it's not a notion of aspiration. Because mostly working class people have got lots of aspiration, but it's a different aspiration to perhaps what politicians and the media think it should be.
Alan Francis, that idea that social mobility is something that you do to working class, that you make them almost feel ashamed of where they're from. What do you make of that?
I largely agree with the points made by the other two contributors, to be honest. We've been arguing at the Social Mobility Commission in the last 3 or 4 years when I've been there that actually we need to change the way that we think about social mobility, away from the kind of Dick Whittington, go to an elite university, get an elite job in London view, which has worked for some and has helped London greatly, but hasn't helped the wider majority of people. So we are interested in a version of social mobility that says you don't have to change your class in order to do better, that you don't have to conform to a particular stereotype, and that a lot of our research has also confirmed this view about place. So we've done a lot of research on perceptions of social mobility, and it's really very, very clear that there are some people that view their social mobility in very individualistic terms, but many people don't. Social connectedness, having a decent job, but not necessarily being the most wealthy, having a good quality of life, and seeing your well-being as connected to your family, your community, and your place is very, very important to people, which is why we think place-based approaches to social mobility, which don't mean you've got to change your social background always to improve your life, have to be a positive step forward.
But in terms of how you see some of the boys in the film who represent many young people across the country for whom education is not working, how do you make a system that better supports these kids? Is it possible? What changes have to be made? What changes do the families have to make, if any?
So when we talk about education, we've always got a problem that education has to meet the needs of a very, very wide range of people. So it's got to meet the needs of people who grow up in Grimsby that do want to go to elite universities, but at the same time, it's got to meet the needs of the young people we can see in the film. Our solution to that is to provide more choice, to strengthen vocational routes. Colleges like mine, Blackpool and the Fylde College, there's a fantastic college in Grimsby, there's lots of good colleges across the country. They're absolutely critical to this, about creating pathways into occupations which allow people to build on their strengths rather than being measured against an abstract educational measure that's a kind of one-size-fits-all. That's one part of the story. There are other things that are needed in terms of economic growth. I think the point was made earlier that if there's no jobs to go to, what does that mean? That's got to be a fundamental part of the future of this country, is addressing this huge economic disparities. There's also issues around communities, family support and so forth. But certainly in terms of education, the notion of more choice, but that doesn't mean declining standards. It does mean high quality choices for everybody.
But there are difficult conversations that I assume we accept have to be had about parental involvement, which the research shows is lacking, for want of a better word, in some white working class communities.
Yeah.
What do we do about that? Well, parental engagement, children's engagement, the idea that I want my kids to be happy, but they have to go to school, just in the world we live in.
Well, we have to do better. We have to show that to all communities, and especially to white working class communities. I come from that community. I'm still working class. I'm a university lecturer. I've got a PhD. I'm working class. So what we need to do is...
By those definitions, you probably wouldn't be.
Yeah, but again, whose definition? Yeah. I mean, my definition is that I'm working class. But what we've got to do is do much better. And we have to show these communities and say, look, there are other things that can happen. One of the things that we've now got is that working class people are sort of funneled into very similar jobs. You can do this, but you can't do this. One of the things I'm really interested in is our working class people get into things like politics, media, arts, the culture industries, because all those sort of industries are absolutely closed off.
But unless you sort out education and attainment, that's not going to happen, is it?
No, but that's why we need a wider and a broader view of what education and attainment means.
And what has your research shown you about parental involvement, engagement, and how it fits into this picture?
So I think there are really brilliant examples of schools doing fantastic things on parent engagement.
First of all, why don't parents engage?
So I think there are great solutions in terms of parent engagement in schools, but I also think that the lack of parent engagement is a consequence of sort of multi-generational educational failure. So half of white working class parents that we speak to tell us that they had a poor educational experience themselves, so they have a memory of a poor experience that they think is still the reality and may well still be the reality. But I also think that a lot of this is very rational for white working class pupils and parents, in that they do not perceive education to be relevant and to be useful to what they want to achieve in life. And so I think the solutions to engagement, to attendance, to all of those things are actually in making education feel more relevant. And there's all sorts of parts of that, but I think the most important part, actually, is getting really good teachers in front of these pupils.
There is also something here as well about being looked down on, prejudice, stigma. You know, that's true as well. So although it is definitely true that white working class parents don't always engage with education, it's also true that white working class people are also stigmatised, looked down on, and these forms of prejudice around them as well.
There's similar arguments, though, to many black and ethnic minority students, aren't they?
They are, because the issue is class. That's what, you know, the issue is class, that there are groups of people who are just not good enough, that they've got to do better, that, you know, that when they walk into a classroom with a teacher, they might feel intimidated by that. That's been working class in Britain.
And can I just pick up on that point? Because I think that was another thing that we heard really powerfully, was how uncomfortable people are talking about white working class, actually. And that is partly because we don't have a definition that people agree on for white working class. In schools, we use free school meals eligibility as the main proxy. That only captures, you know, a very small proportion of the people that would call themselves white working class. So I think that we need to surface this conversation, give people a definition to work from, and also give schools, give government, give other people the data that we need to. Because at the moment we aren't looking at...
Part of that discomfort is because in some groups of non-white free school meal kids, they're doing much better. So you have to have a conversation about why.
Yeah, you do. And I think that you also have to have that conversation about the prejudices and bigotry that is also around white working class people as well. And that is a much more difficult conversation to have.
But having an understanding of why some groups are doing better is important, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
Given that they're the same... They're facing the same disadvantages economically,
And what we do is that we pit them against each other, and that is a problem, because for me, this is about class. But when we start pitting people against each other, like white working class people are culturally inferior, which is, that's a common trope about white working class people. White working class people are reactionary. You know, if you give them too much education, they might become reactionary. There's always fears around what white working class people might do if they get a platform. So I think what we've got to do is really start to think about those prejudices as well.
And that's a widespread society thing. But I want to come back to you, Alan, if you would, about what you do in education right now, because it is true, for example, that some ethnic minority free school meals pupils, because that's the definition that seems to be currently the most workable one, are doing much better than their white equivalents. And we need to understand why that is, don't we, in order to change an education system to make it work for everybody. We do. We also need to recognise that class, in some respects, is a helpful category, in other respects, creates great complexity. So the data I started off explaining to you shows that many people born into working class families have done very, very well following that education university model, and but some haven't. So it's not universally the case that all working class students do badly. That's just not true. But there is an issue when you start to look at who's doing well and who isn't. We get into some very complex issues and some difficult trade-offs. I noticed the woman in the clip who was talking about the difficulties she has every day just getting to school on time. And I'm sure that's come out of other people's research. These are difficult challenges. But the problem is for the school is if they start to make exceptions for particular families, then they're going to be seen as reducing expectations or lowering expectations. And these are difficult trade-offs. The kinder we are, the more gentle we are about the difficulties people have. The problem is sometimes we can be ending up confirming them in the fact that they're not going to do as well. And it's how you strike that balance, and that's a difficult challenge of the education system. Where schools do very well, they often strike that balance by being very, very strict, by being very firm, no excuses kind of culture.
But the problem we've got is that approach doesn't work in every place. It's worked very well in parts of London, for example. There may be lots of reasons for that, but it doesn't tend to work so well in other places. And these are the dilemmas that we've got to unpick.
And you're saying quite gently that actually should parents, should schools be less gentle? There should be more boundaries, more expectations? I don't care whether you're happy or not, you're going to school. Is that it?
Well, hopefully school and college is an enjoyable experience for the vast majority of the time. Not always. Life is just not like that always. And some parts of learning are just hard slogs. So we do have to be realistic about that. We also have to be very realistic. I was interested also by the guy in the film who talked with quite a lot of nostalgia about the jobs that have gone from Grimsby. But we have to be really honest, those jobs are not coming back. Those days are not coming back. So the future is technology. The future is higher skilled occupations. And we've got to work out how we bring more of those opportunities to areas and through those create more opportunities for everybody. But the reality is that education now is really important in terms of people's future and in terms of the broader economy. We can't get away from that fact.
I mean, that's true, isn't it?
Yeah, it is true as well. But one of the things that we haven't done is we haven't measured this, because we haven't protected people as well. So we've got protected characteristics for lots of groups of people, but the one group of people that can be, you can be prejudiced against them without fear is white working class people. Because white middle class people are protected by their class, whereas white working class people you can be prejudiced against them.
But, I mean, there's still discrimination,
yes.
even with the law,
yes,
against many groups.
Yes,
and
there
still
is.
A number of groups who don't do much better than
there is,
white
but
working class
socio-economic status is not protected at all throughout. So what we don't have a good measurement of what's happening, because free school meals is not a good measurement. Also, the tick box of what ethnicity you are is not a good measurement. And then also, you know,
the government have taken this decision to very specifically, you know, it's contentious as you allude to.
I don't feel comfortable with that, actually.
But they've taken this decision to focus on a group they call the white working class. They are talking about Mission Coastal and Mission Northeast, which are place-based initiatives to try and put in money, resource and target these children. Will it work? Is it the answer?
I think there's a lot that needs to be learnt about how to do well for this group. So there are vanishingly few schools that do as well for white working class pupils as other groups of pupils. So I don't think we know enough about what the solutions are for this group. So in that sense, I think these sorts of areas where we can test and learn different approaches and look at different solutions are a good idea. I think the white working class group is a difficult one because it is so dispersed. It is all across the country, and so taking very place-focused approaches to a group that is essentially all across the country is difficult. But I think, like Alan said, that it is essential that the government focuses on this group, because they are a group that has done poorly in education for generations, and we haven't focused on them.
But we're individualising a structural problem here, aren't we? Because what we've got a country that's economy doesn't work for the country. It works for different parts of the country, but it doesn't work for all the country. So what we're doing is we're sort of individualising this as this group, we know they need to have more education. But I keep coming back to this question: what happens if we raise the level of education and everybody gets good GCSEs, everybody gets good A-levels, but
that's not an argument for not doing it.
No, it's not an argument for not doing it, but it's still an argument about what happens afterwards. Because if you're growing up in Sunderland or Mansfield or Blackpool and still where you live is still been hollowed out, there's still not any opportunities. What does social mobility mean? It means getting on the M1 and going to London.
But to Alan's point is that can we look at children in disadvantaged areas, and there's no doubt about that, who aren't doing well, and just say, I want you to be happy. You don't, even if you do well, there'll be nothing, so don't do anything. I mean, we have to tackle it, don't we, as an issue?
And I think there are solutions. We have to think about how to solve these labour market problems. So we heard from pupils across the country that they are fascinated by the idea of apprenticeships. They've really bought into this earning while you learn thing. But in white working class majority areas, there are really few apprenticeships because they mostly are driven by big employers. And we're talking about SMEs who have to take on quite a risk in hiring young people. So I think there are measures that we need to put in place to sort of incentivise small and medium-sized employers in white working class areas to offer these sorts of things.
Alan Francis, of course, the project that everyone points to is the London Challenge, which did significant things to raise attainment, often in ethnic minority children and disadvantaged groups in London. Is it applicable to places like Grimsby or Nottingham?
Not in that format, and I'm not convinced that the London Challenge in itself is the major explanation for why London's done better educationally. Too many of the approaches to improving educational attainment focus on improving outcomes for institutions, not for people. So it becomes about grades, not about what you know and what you can do. Now, my big worry about some of the young people that are coming through the education system is how low their levels of literacy and numeracy are, for example. And that has to be a really central part of addressing any of the wider issues about opportunity. But on its own, we've had lots of area-based initiatives around education improvement. We've had London Challenge, we've had education action zones going back 20-odd years, we've had opportunity areas. None of them have been convincing solutions because actually this is a problem with many moving parts. So our view in the Social Mobility Commission, I think it echoes some of the points the other contributors have made, is we need coherent, in the round, place-based solutions. They have to start with the economy. They have to recognise the need to get economic growth moving across the country is very important. And along with that, a much more radical version of devolution that focuses on innovation, growth and reform. So you get that real sense that family support, communities, investment in those places, development of education systems, they have to come as a package. If we take one thing out in isolation, we'll end up with the same problem which we've had for now nearly 40 years.
Yeah, I think Alan's absolutely right there. What has happened is London offers many opportunities. It offers opportunity. It's where the media is, it's where the arts is, it's where culture is, it's where politics is, it's where business is. So therefore, raising standards in school in London and then saying, here's the world for you. But that doesn't work in Blackpool, does it? It doesn't work in Sunderland, doesn't work in Mansfield, because we can raise that attainment and then we say, go to London. Well, that's not the answer, is it? Especially for white working class communities, because they want to stay where they are. So what we've got to do is really start to look at the structural problems of the economy. And
that is a very long-term solution, isn't it?
Well, it is, but 20 years ago, it could have been done in 20 years, and 40 years ago, when they closed the coal mines and the factories, instead of doing nothing and hoping for the best, so a long-term project starts today.
But in simple terms, because I know you say this is true in your area too, Alan's talking about really poor literacy levels.
Yes.
It's a damning indictment, isn't it, of the education system, that children are coming out barely able to read or write. We have to fix that.
Yeah,
how do we do it?
I meet 15-year-old and 16-year-old young people all the time where I live who can barely read and write. That is disgraceful in 2026. It breaks my heart that that's still happening. But it is happening. So, yes, we do have to do something about that.
And everyone has to do something about it. The system,
everybody,
parents. You have to find a way of engaging with the pupils.
Yeah, so we know that 40% of pupils actually leave primary school without achieving the expected standard in reading. And that for this group is a real barrier to accessing education and the rest of the curriculum. And they tell us that this is why they don't attend school, this is why they behave poorly, because they're bored and they can't access the curriculum because they can't read adequately. So I think there is a real focus to be had on reading, and there's all sorts of interventions that you can put into place. And I suppose what we need to think about is what are the barriers to schools putting those interventions into place at the moment.
Alan, it's an incredibly bleak conversation, I have to say. I'm going to ask you how optimistic you are and what is the one thing that needs to be done straight away?
Well, can I just say on the optimism level, So if you visit any further education college in the country, you're going to meet a very wide variety of young people, all with very high levels of ambition and aspiration, and many of whom are going to do very, very well. They don't all follow that academic university elite occupational route. They follow their route into construction and nursing and a whole range of other professions and outcomes which are very, very good. So let's not be gloomy about everybody. There's some very, very good examples of some great outcomes.
But it's a group being identified by the government, isn't it? That's the thing. They're saying this is where the focus needs to be.
Absolutely, but we need to be quite specific about what's the problem we're trying to fix, if you like. And I do think that is to do with those most disadvantaged communities and those coming out with the very lowest achievement. If there were things that we could do quickly, I think we really need to think very seriously about how we are going to address the economic disparities in our country. There isn't a quick way of doing that, but the point was made earlier, if we'd done it 20 years ago, 30 years ago, Manchester did set out on that journey in the 1990s, and Manchester is the one exception now to the rest of the country and showing a beacon to others in terms of what can be done. It's not in itself the total answer, but there are some real good examples of what we can do to start turning this around.
Katie Carr, your final word?
So our inquiry is going to be publishing a set of recommendations in June, and we'll get into the specifics there. But what I would say is that I think this is a very systemic, a very entrenched, a very multi-generational problem, and we need to be thinking about solutions that are 10 to 15 years from now. We need to be starting and committing to a whole plethora of things that will improve the educational experience of these people.
There are no easy answers here, are there?
No, there's no easy answers, but there never has been any easy answers. But what there should be a commitment, and that's what I'm hoping for. I work with young people where I live, and they do amazing things. It may not be academic, but they're learning how to look after the land. They're learning how to fish and look after wildlife. So I do see really positive things happening. I don't see those things being supported very well. And so that's what I'd put out is, let's have some support.
And an acceptance that class is perhaps the predominant issue.
Yeah, that class still matters in Britain today.
Dr. Lisa Mackenzie, Katie Carr and Alan Francis, thanks so much for talking to us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.